My name is Charlotte. I'm 62 years old, and for the last 3 months, my home has been the back seat of a rusty old sedan. It's December in Oregon. A kind of cold that doesn't just nip at your skin, it seeps into your bones and sets up camp. Every morning, I wake to the sound of my own breath, fogging up the windows. I press my palm against the glass, making small, fleeting circles of condensation that disappear as quickly as they form. The thin sheet of cardboard I use as a mattress has lost all its firmness, molding perfectly to the ache of my spine. I sleep in 3 layers of clothes, but still, I wake up shivering, my knees stiff and my sense of self slowly draining away with the heat. I park in the back lot of a long-abandoned office supply store. It closed down during the pandemic, and now no one ever comes here. It feels safe enough to disappear. That's what I've become. After all, a person easy to overlook. Before I begin telling you my story, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. And if you'd like to share your own story, feel free to write to us. My daughter, Anya, lives a short 30-minute drive away. She knows my general situation. She knows I'm in my car. She just never asks for the exact location. The last time we spoke on the phone, she said, "Just hold on a little longer, Mom. Ethan is under so much pressure with the new baby coming. And you know how he gets when he's stressed." And I do know. I know very well. That's why I left. And yet, every single night before I close my eyes, I find myself checking my phone, half hoping for a message that never comes. Not even a simple, "Are you warm enough?" Just silence. Cold and complete. Life wasn't always like this. When a flood took my house last September, Anya was the first person I called. She answered on the first ring, her voice cracking with worry. "Of course, you can stay with us, Mom," she said. "Just until you get back on your feet." I believed her. I wanted to. For a few weeks, it truly felt like a safe harbor. I did my best to help out, doing the dishes, cooking dinner a few nights a week, and reading bedtime stories to my granddaughter, Mia. I tried my hardest not to take up too much space. But 6 weeks later, the welcome mat had clearly been rolled up and put away. It started with small things. My son-in-law, Ethan, started highlighting the things I ate on the grocery list. He taped to the fridge. Then, the bathroom schedule mysteriously changed to accommodate Mia's sleep routine, which meant I couldn't shower after 8 p.m. And then, there was the note. It was taped to the kitchen cabinet in Ethan's big, blocky handwriting. "Please limit personal laundry to weekends. Thanks." No hi, Charlotte. No smiley face. Just a command, stuck like a label on the life I was now disrupting. That evening, with a few bags packed, I told Anya I would find somewhere else to stay. She didn't protest. She didn't even look up from Mia's high chair. She just wiped banana off her daughter's chin and said, "Ethan's been stressed. You know how he gets." I knew exactly how he got. He got short. He got cold. He felt entitled to a peace and order that no longer included me. At first, I didn't blame her. I thought maybe I had been too much of a burden. Maybe I had stayed too long. Maybe at 62, I really did need to stop being a burden and start figuring things out on my own, and so I moved into my car. I told myself it was temporary, just for a few weeks. I had some savings, enough for maybe 1 month of rent if I could find something cheap. But cheap doesn't exist when your credit is a disaster and your mailing address is a license plate number. I spent my days at the public library, charging my phone, applying for jobs. and researching aid programs. I showered at the gym. Using a 3-day free trial under different names, I learned to stretch a single cup of coffee to last me for hours, using it for warmth and alertness. Anya would check in via text every week or so. "You doing okay? Or hope it's getting better?" She always added something cheerful like, "Mia learned a new word," or "Ethan might get that promotion," as if her happy news could warm my freezing nights. But what hurt most wasn't the distance. It was how quickly I had become inconvenient. How easily love had turned into a matter of logistics. That's when I realized that some people love you most when you're easy to manage, when your needs don't require them to adjust their own lives. Once you step outside the small, simple role they've written for you, the spotlight dims. The stage door locks from the inside. There's a particular kind of silence in families that speaks louder than any words. It's not the angry silence, full of yelling, slamming doors, or threats. This silence is polite, civil, and wrapped in phrases like "just for now" or "we'll figure it out." It's the kind of silence that kills slowly, like carbon monoxide. You don't even notice you've stopped breathing until it's too late. Anya and I used to talk every Sunday, just about small things, recipes, the weather, stories about Mia's preschool. For a while, I thought that meant we were close. But looking back now, I wonder if we were just familiar. There's a crucial difference between the two. Familiarity keeps things on the surface. It remembers your favorite casserole but forgets how you like to be spoken to. It invites you over for the holidays but flinches when you stay too long. And when things get truly uncomfortable, like job loss, grief, or God forbid, homelessness, it doesn't lean in to help. It looks away. I learned that some daughters want mothers who are wise, warm, and available, but not messy, not broken, not inconvenient. That last word, inconvenient, was the one that kept echoing in my mind. When I lost everything, Anya didn't become cruel. She became quiet, and that quiet carved out more pain than any shouting ever could. I've talked to other women at shelters, in parking lots, and even in library bathrooms. Their stories sound eerily similar to mine. They are parents who raised kids alone, worked double shifts, gave up vacations and sleep in comfort, and years later found themselves sleeping in cars while their adult children planned baby showers. There is something no one tells you about getting older. Sometimes the people you love most can't, or won't, carry the weight of who you become when life gets hard. And that doesn't make them villains. It just makes them human. But recognizing that doesn't make it hurt any less. It still breaks something inside you to look at someone you gave your life to and realize they only have room for a version of you that doesn't need anything in return. The cracks were always there. We just never talked about them. But cracks have a way of spreading, and eventually, everything breaks. It was a Tuesday. Not special, not tragic. Just another Tuesday that felt exactly like the dozens before it. I was at the public library, sitting at my usual corner computer terminal, refreshing job boards and reading articles I'd already skimmed a dozen times. Then I saw it. The subject line: Estate of Adeline Black. Urgent contact request. I almost deleted it. Spam. A scam, surely. But something, either curiosity or stubbornness, made me click. Dear Ms. Reed, it read, we represent the estate of the late Adeline Black. Our firm has been attempting to locate you in regard to a bequest made in her will. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss the inheritance she has left in your name. I read the email 5 times, then a 6th. My heart hammered against my ribs. Adeline. Aunt Adeline. My mother's younger sister with the big laugh and the collection of antique teacups. She had moved to California decades ago. We hadn't spoken in over 20 years. I had just assumed she'd passed away long ago, forgotten like most of the older generation whose Christmas cards had stopped arriving. But she had remembered me. When I finally called the number, the lawyer's tone was indifferent and professional. As a matter of fact, he said, "You have inherited a home in Pasadena, California. It's a 1920s craftsman-style bungalow, along with investment accounts and life insurance benefits." I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "How much are we talking about?" I whispered. "The home is appraised at approximately $865,000, he replied. "Liquid assets total just over $320,000 before taxes and minor debts." I couldn't speak. For months, I had been counting quarters in gas station bathrooms, sleeping in a car that leaked when it rained. And now, someone I barely remembered had left me a new beginning. After I hung up, I just sat there in that hard plastic library chair, surrounded by students typing essays and retirees browse cookbooks. I was stunned. No one knew that the woman in the corner unwashed, unnoticed, and alone had just inherited over $1 million. Everything was about to change. The flight to California felt like I was moving through a dream I hadn't earned. I used cash to buy the ticket, money I had been saving for a security deposit, hoarded like treasure, protected as my very last card to play. As the plane lifted into the gray sky, I stared out the window, half expecting to wake up in the back of my car, cold and hungry again. But when I stepped into the warm California sun, something shifted inside me. There was a warmth in the air, not just from the weather, but from a new kind of possibility. A car was waiting for me at the airport, sent by the law firm. The driver's name was Manuel, an older man with laugh lines around his eyes and a quiet, gentle way of talking. On the freeway, he asked me, "First time in California?" "Not since I was a kid," I said. "Family out here." I paused. "Kind of." He nodded slowly. "Sometimes the family we forget about is the one that saves us." When we pulled up to the house, I was speechless. It was beautiful, faded, but proud. A bungalow with weathered paint, a wraparound porch, and tall oak trees casting afternoon shadows across the lawn. Inside, the air smelled like lavender and old books. The living room had built-in shelves filled with mysteries and poetry. The kitchen, though dated, was spotless. There were thriving, green plants in every corner, carefully tended. It wasn't just a house, it was a life in the bedroom. I found photographs of Adeline over the years. Some were of her alone, but many more were of her with another woman, always the same one. She was tall, with silver hair, and her eyes smiled even in the still frames. They were together in every photo, on beaches, in gardens, holding hands. On this very porch, her name was Beatrice. They had been partners for almost 40 years. I stood there, holding a picture of them laughing over coffee, and realized Adeline hadn't just remembered me, she had chosen me. Her lawyer explained everything. Adeline had no children of her own, and Beatrice's family had contested her will after she passed away. But Adeline stood firm. 6 months before she died, she had updated her own will, leaving everything to me. Not because I was the closest relative, but maybe because I was the most forgotten. Maybe she saw something in me. Or maybe she understood what it felt like to be invisible to the very people who should have cared the most. That night, I slept in her now my bed. There were clean sheets, soft pillows, and real warmth. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of being woken by a knock on my window or the sound of a garbage truck. I was home, not just under a roof, but finally seen, safe, and free. To start again, Enya's text came 2 days later. So we heard about the inheritance. That's amazing. Mom, Ethan and I were thinking of coming out to visit next weekend. There was no, how are you settling in? There was no, is the house what you expected? Just a smiley face, a flight plan, and the pungent smell of curiosity cloaked in concern. I should have said no, but a small part of me was still clinging to a sliver of hope. Hope that maybe now, with the stress of survival gone, we could fix what was broken between us. Maybe they would see me as more than just a stopgap. Maybe they would be proud of what I had rebuilt. So, I said yes. They arrived on Saturday afternoon, stepping out of a rental car, looking tanned, well-rested, and mildly impatient. Anya hugged me like someone greeting a distant relative. Ethan gave a flat, "Nice place," before immediately glancing around the neighborhood. At dinner, they were all smiles. "We're just so happy for you, Mom," Anya said, sipping her wine. "This place is cute." Ethan leaned in, his voice all business. "We've actually been house hunting ourselves. Found one that's almost perfect. Just a bit of a stretch with the down payment." And there it was. I waited for the ask. It didn't take long. "We thought maybe," Anya said, her tone light and obviously rehearsed, "you could help us out a little. Just a loan. 50,000-60,000 max. We'd pay you back as soon as Ethan's next promotion comes through." I just stared at them. My daughter and her husband, so polished, so confident. They weren't here to reconnect. They were here to assess the assets. I was no longer the burden on their couch. I was now a potential benefactor with a guest room and an investment portfolio. "I need to think about it," I said. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept replaying every single conversation we'd ever had, trying to pinpoint when the shift had happened. When had I stopped being a mother and become a means to an end? The next morning, I drove to the hardware store and bought new locks for the front and back doors. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed a clear boundary. One that couldn't be undone with a key that Anya still had from my old life. Ethan called it an overreaction. "We're family," he said. "Why are you acting like we're strangers?" Because in many ways, we were strangers. They saw this house as a lucky break. I saw it as my rebirth. They saw my bank account. I saw Adeline's legacy. They came with open hands, but I had just started to close mine at brunch. I told them I wouldn't be loaning them any money. I told them the house wasn't a vacation rental. I told them that I was finally starting to feel like myself again, and I wasn't willing to trade that feeling for their approval. Enya's smile cracked. "You're different, Mom." I simply nodded. "Yes," I said, "and I'm finally okay with that." They left in silence. No hugs, no plans to return. Just the same way they had left me before, quietly and with disappointment. Only this time, I was the one who closed the door. There's something sacred about changing a lock with your own hands. The screws, the bolts, the careful turns. It was a process slow enough to be meditative and intentional enough to feel like a ritual. It took me nearly 2 hours to replace the old brass knobs on the front and back doors of the bungalow. I wasn't just keeping people out. I was choosing what I would let in. Each click of the screwdriver was like a whispered vow to myself. No more pretending. No more apologizing for taking up space. No more begging to be included in lives that didn't have room for me. The hardware store clerk, a kind man with fingers stained from decades of fixing things, helped me pick out the right tools. He even gave me a quick lesson on how to install them. Most empowering thing you can do, he said as he rang up the sale. Every woman should know how to secure her own front door. That night, I locked my home. Truly locked it for the first time since arriving. The tumblers fell into place with a sound that echoed louder than any argument or guilt trip ever could. It was the sound of ownership, of finality, and of peace. Anya texted again the next morning. "Mom, this isn't like you. Please talk to us before you do something you'll regret." But I wasn't doing something I would regret. I was undoing the regrets I had carried for far too long. Regrets for staying quiet, for shrinking myself to fit their comfort, for accepting a temporary kind of love that came with permanent conditions. This house didn't fix everything, but it reminded me that I still had choices. And the power to say no wasn't cruel. It was sacred. For the first time in years, my front door locked from the inside, and I was the one who held the only key. It's been 3 weeks since Anya and Ethan flew back to Oregon. They haven't called. I haven't reached out. The silence between us no longer feels like a punishment. It feels like space to breathe. Every morning, I have coffee on the porch that Adeline once shared with Beatrice. The sunlight slips through the orange trees, and the wind carries a quiet, unfamiliar welcome. I joined the neighborhood book club. I planted rosemary and lavender along the front path. I hung the one thing I managed to save from my old home, a faded quilt my mother made, now on the living room wall. This life is small, maybe by some people's standards, but it's mine, entirely mine. The other day, I met with Adeline's attorney again. I asked him to update my will. I want to create a scholarship, I told him, for women over 50 who are starting over after losing everything. He paused. "Do you have a name for it?" I nodded. "The Second Sunrise Fund. Because that's what this house was for me. Not a rescue, but a sunrise. A second chance to stand tall in the light after months of being treated like I belonged. In the dark, I still love Anya. I always will. But love with conditions isn't love. It's a transaction. And I'm no longer trading parts of myself for proximity to people who call that love. If she ever learns to love me without needing me to be smaller, quieter, or easier, I'll open the door again. But until then, I will keep living fully, freely, and unapologetically. And if you're listening to this and you've ever felt like someone's extra piece instead of their priority, let me tell you this. You are allowed to change the locks. You are allowed to choose peace over permission. You are allowed to choose you. And if this story resonated with you, please share it.